The lights of Nexus Prime blazed against the darkness of space. The massive station floated at the center of the galaxy, home to 47 different alien species. Today was special. Today marked 50 years since humans joined the Galactic Coalition. Banners hung from every corridor. Music from a dozen worlds filled the air. Everyone was celebrating. Hanbit Kang stood at the speaker's platform in the Grand Assembly Hall. He was 42 years old, with gray hair starting to show at his temples. His diplomatic uniform was perfectly pressed. He smiled at the crowd of alien delegates before him. Some had scales, some had fur, some looked like walking plants. But all of them were watching him with curious eyes. "Honored members of the coalition," Hanbit began, his voice warm and friendly. 50 years ago, humanity was alone. We looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone else was out there. Then you found us. You welcomed us. You taught us that the galaxy could be a peaceful place. He paused, letting his words sink in. Today I stand before you not as a stranger, but as a friend. Humanity thanks you for 50 years of peace. The crowd applauded. Their various hands, claws, and tentacles made different sounds as they clapped. Hanbit bowed slightly and stepped away from the platform. He walked back to his seat, still smiling. But his eyes were sharp, always watching, always thinking. In the back of the hall, Threxus watched the human diplomat with interest. Threxus was a Velroth, an insect-like creature with 4 arms and compound eyes. He had been assigned to observe humans for the past 10 years. It was his job to write reports about how well they fit into coalition society. Most of his reports were positive. Humans were polite. They followed the rules. They contributed new technology and ideas. But something bothered Threxus. Something he could not quite explain. Humans smiled too much. They were always friendly, always helpful. Yet their military ships were always ready. Their soldiers always trained. Even during 50 years of perfect peace, humans never seemed to relax completely. It was strange. Threxus made a note in his datapad. He would include this observation in his next report. Probably nothing important. Just a curious detail about human behavior. Across the station, in the Coalition archives, Doyen Lee was having a very different kind of day. He was a scientist, 35 years old, specializing in alien cultures and biology. He spent most of his time reading old records, trying to understand how different species thought and lived. It was fascinating work, though sometimes lonely. Today, Doyen was searching for information about first contact protocols. He wanted to write a paper about how species typically reacted when meeting humans for the first time. The archive's computer was slow, as always. He typed in search terms and waited. That was when he saw it. A file labeled, Species Integration Risk Assessment, Humanity, sealed by order. The file was marked with the highest security clearance. Doyen did not have permission to open it. But the fact that it existed troubled him deeply. Why would there be a risk assessment about his own species? And why was it sealed? He stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he made a decision. He would find a way to read that file. He had to know what it said. Far from Nexus Prime, at the edge of Coalition space, Captain Yoonji Park was dealing with more practical concerns. She commanded the colony ship Haven's Light, which orbited the human settlement of New Horizon. The colony was 5 years old and growing well. 3,000 people called it home. Yoonji had 2 children who played in the colony's parks. Life was good. Her communications officer interrupted her thoughts. Captain, we're getting reports of ships near the border. Krovan vessels, Yoonji frowned. The Krovan were a reptilian species known for their aggressive nature. But they were part of the coalition. They had to follow the peace treaties like everyone else. How many ships? 15, ma'am. They're just sitting there at the border, not moving closer but not leaving either. Keep monitoring them, Yoonji said calmly. They're probably just on patrol. Nothing to worry about. She believed her own words. The galaxy had been at peace for 10,000 years. Why would that change now? But in Krovan space, Supreme Commander Morlax had very different plans. He sat in his command chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing coalition territory. His scales were dark red, almost black. His eyes were cold and calculating. The humans are weak, he told his war council. Look at them, soft skin, small teeth, no natural weapons. They have been part of the coalition for 50 years, and what have they done? Nothing. They talk about peace. They smile and shake hands. They are prey animals pretending to be equals. One of his officers spoke up. But Commander, they are protected by coalition law. If we attack them, the other species will respond. Morlax laughed, a sound like grinding stones. The coalition is soft. They have forgotten what real power looks like. We will attack one human colony, just one. We will test their response, and when we see how weak they truly are, we will take what we want. The coalition will do nothing. His officers nodded. They began to plan the attack. Back on Nexus Prime, the celebration continued. Hanbit Kang shook hands with dozens of alien diplomats. He laughed at their jokes. He spoke about cooperation and friendship. All the while, part of his mind was elsewhere. He had been a military strategist before becoming a diplomat. Old habits never really died. He thought about defenses, about supply lines, about what would happen if the peace ever broke. He hoped he would never need to use that knowledge. But he was ready, just in case. In the archives, Doyen Lee worked late into the night. He used every trick he knew to bypass the security systems. It took hours, but finally the sealed file opened. He began to read. His face went pale. His hands started to shake. The file contained a warning. An old warning from a species called the Venetrix. They had gone extinct thousands of years ago. But before they disappeared, they had left a message about humans. A message that made Doyen's blood run cold. 3 days later, everything changed. The Krovan attack came without warning. 15 warships dropped out of hyperspace above New Horizon. They did not send a message. They did not make demands. They simply opened fire. Yunji Park was in her quarters when the alarm started screaming. She ran to the bridge, her heart pounding. On the screen, she saw her colony dying. Buildings exploded. Ships burned. People she knew, people she loved, were being killed. "Send a distress signal," she shouted. "Send it to Earth." Send it to everyone. Her communications officer worked frantically. The message went out just as Krovan soldiers began boarding Haven's Light. Yunji grabbed a weapon. She would not die quietly. On Earth, in the military headquarters, Commander Boranam received the distress signal. She was 38 years old, a veteran of Earth's final wars before humanity united. She had seen combat. She had lost friends. She knew what war really meant. She watched the recording from New Horizon. Watched as 12,000 civilians died. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes were cold as ice. When the recording ended, she turned to her staff. "Activate Protocol Hammer," she said quietly. "Mobilize the entire fleet." "No survivors." Her officers looked shocked. "Commander, shouldn't we wait for diplomatic authorization?" Boranam looked at them. Her voice was soft but absolutely certain. "They killed our people. They attacked without warning. They chose this. Now they will learn what happens when you hurt humans." She paused. "The galaxy is about to remember what we really are." News of the attack spread through the galaxy like fire. On Nexus Prime, chaos erupted in the Grand Assembly Hall. Alien diplomats shouted at each other. Some demanded immediate action. Others called for restraint. Everyone had an opinion. No one had answers. Hanbit Kang sat quietly in the human delegation section. His face was calm. His hands were folded neatly on the desk in front of him. But inside, he was making calculations. War calculations. The kind he had not needed to make in 50 years. The Coalition Council leader, a tall being made of living crystal, called for order. Her voice echoed through the hall. "We must respond with measured force. Coalition law is clear. Proportional response only. We will send peacekeepers to secure the border. We will demand reparations from the Krovan, but we will not escalate to full war." Several delegates nodded in agreement. This was how things were done. This was how the coalition had maintained peace for 10,000 years. Calm, measured, controlled. Hanbit stood up. "We appreciate the Council's wisdom," he said smoothly. "Humanity will, of course, abide by all coalition protocols." His smile never wavered. "We ask only that we be allowed to send our own forces to recover any survivors and secure our colony." The council leader agreed. It seemed reasonable. Humans had the right to protect their own territory. The meeting continued. Discussions about proper procedures, debates about diplomatic channels, all very civilized. As soon as the meeting ended, Hanbit returned to his private quarters. He activated a secure communication channel. The face that appeared on the screen was Commander Boranam. She looked tired. Her eyes were hard. "The council wants restraint," Hanbit said quietly. "Of course they do," Bora replied. "They've never fought a real war. They don't understand. Publicly, we will cooperate with them. We will follow their rules." Hanbit paused. "But privately?" Bora's expression did not change. "Privately, we do what needs to be done. The fleet is already moving. Protocol Hammer is active, and I've authorized Taiyang to begin Ghost Initiative." Hanbit nodded slowly. "Make it count. Make sure they never think about doing this again." "They won't," Bora said, "because they won't survive to think about anything." The communication ended. Meanwhile, in the archives, Doyun Li was still staring at the Venatrix file. He had been reading it over and over for hours. The words were clear, but their implications were terrifying. The Venatrix had been a powerful species. They had conquered multiple solar systems. They had technology far beyond most other races. 200,000 years ago, they had visited Earth. Back then, humans were primitive, living in caves, hunting with stone tools. The Venatrix had studied them for decades. Their report was chilling. Doyun read it again, his hands shaking slightly. "These creatures are persistence predators. They have no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. Yet they are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. They chase prey for days without stopping. The prey runs until its heart gives out. Then the humans simply walk up and kill it. They coordinate in groups with frightening efficiency. They make tools not just for survival, but specifically for killing. They plan. They adapt. They learn from every failure. Most disturbing, they protect their pack members with absolute dedication. A human will sacrifice itself without hesitation to save another human. This is not rational behavior. This is instinct." Recommendation: do not engage. These creatures may be primitive now, but they are apex predators. If they ever develop technology, they will be unstoppable. Avoid all contact. The file ended there. But there was a note added by Coalition officials 50 years ago. Doyun read it with growing horror. Council acknowledges Venatrix warning. However, human technology is too valuable to ignore. Fusion power, medical advances, and artificial intelligence development exceed all other species. Decision: integrate humans into Coalition, but monitor closely. Maintain sealed classification of this warning to avoid prejudice against human members. Doyun sat back in his chair. They knew. The Coalition leaders knew about the warning. They had hidden it deliberately. They had gambled that 50 years of peace would prove the Venatrix wrong. Now the Krovan had attacked, and that gamble was about to fail spectacularly. Threxus was assigned to observe human military preparations. It was supposed to be a routine assignment. Just watch, make notes, report back. Simple. But what he saw disturbed him deeply. Human military bases were not chaotic. There was no panic, no rushing around. Instead, everyone moved with calm, mechanical efficiency. Soldiers checked their equipment methodically. Ships were loaded with supplies in perfect order. Commands were given quietly and followed instantly. It was like watching a machine start up, cold, precise, inevitable. Threxus approached a human officer. "Excuse me. I am Coalition Observer Threxus. I'm here to monitor your response to the crisis." The officer barely glanced at him. "Fine. Stay out of the way." He continued working. "I notice your soldiers seem very calm," Threxus said carefully. "Are they not worried about the battle ahead?" The officer stopped and looked at Threxus. Really looked at him. "Worried? No. We've trained for this. We knew it would happen eventually. You expected war, but there has been peace for 50 years. The officer smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. Peace doesn't mean war won't come. It just means war hasn't come yet. We prepared anyway. That's what humans do. We prepare. He walked away. Threxus felt a chill run through his body. These were not the friendly, smiling humans he had observed for 10 years. Or rather, they were the same humans. But the mask was slipping. He was seeing what had been hidden beneath the surface all along. Across the base, Commander Boranam stood in the main operations center. Holographic displays showed the positions of 97 human warships. It was the entire human defense fleet. Every ship humanity possessed. All of them now moving toward Krovan space, but that was not all. "Ghost Initiative is ready," said a voice behind her. Taiyang Choi stepped into the light. He was 40 years old, with scars on his hands that spoke of a violent past. He ran humanity's Special Operations Division, the part of the military that did not officially exist. "How many teams?" Bora asked. 50, already in position in Krovan space. They've been there for 3 years. Bora nodded. 3 years, before the attack. "We've had teams in every coalition member's territory since we joined," Taiyang said quietly. "Just in case. We learned our lesson on Earth. Never be unprepared. Never trust that peace will last." "What can they do?" Taiyang smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Everything. Power grids, communications, transportation, food supply, water treatment. We've mapped every critical system in Krovan space. We can shut down their entire civilization without firing a single shot in space." "Do it," Bora said. "But wait for my signal. I want to give them one chance to surrender, one chance to return our people alive. If they refuse, then we show them what happens when you wake sleeping predators." Doyenli finally left the archives. He needed to tell someone about the warning. But who? If he told the council, they would arrest him for accessing classified files. If he told the humans, they might use it as justification for even worse actions. His communicator beeped. A message from Elder Quentis, one of the Lumari, the ancient energy beings who maintained the archives. The message was brief. "I know you accessed the sealed file. Come to my chamber. We need to talk." Doyen went. He had no choice now. Elder Quentis floated in a chamber of pure light. The Lumari had no solid body, just glowing energy shaped vaguely like a humanoid form. When Quentis spoke, the words seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You read the Venetrix warning." "Yes," Doyen admitted. "I had to know." "Then you understand what is about to happen." "The Krovan made a terrible mistake." "Yes. But there is something else you should know, something not in that file." Quentis paused. "The Venetrix were our allies. They were powerful. They could destroy planets if needed. But when they encountered primitive humans on Earth, they did not attack. They fled. They went to the furthest edge of the galaxy and hid there. Why? Because they understood something the Krovan do not. They recognized apex predators when they saw them. And wise prey does not attack predators. It runs." The Elder's light pulsed slowly. "The Venatrix went extinct 5,000 years ago. We never found out why. No war. No plague. They just stopped existing. Some of us think they went mad. Mad with fear of what humans might become." Doyen felt cold. "Are you saying humans killed them?" "No. Humans were still primitive when the Venatrix died. I am saying the Venatrix were so terrified of humans that it destroyed them from within. That is how dangerous they believed your species to be." Silence filled the chamber. "What do I do?" Doyen finally asked. "Watch," Quentis said softly. "Watch and learn. The galaxy is about to see what the Venatrix saw, and then we will all understand why they were so afraid." Oh! The human fleet arrived at the Krovan border 3 days after the attack. 97 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They hung in the darkness, their weapons ready but not yet firing, waiting. Supreme Commander Morlax watched them from his flagship. His reptilian face twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. "Only 97 ships," he said to his officers. "We have 300. They are outnumbered 3 to 1. This will be easier than I thought." "Should we attack, Commander?" asked one of his captains. "Wait," Morlax said. "Let them speak first. Let them beg. It will be amusing." A communication request came through. Morlax accepted it. Commander Boranam's face appeared on his screen. She looked calm, too calm. Her eyes were like ice. "Supreme Commander Morlax," she said quietly. "You attacked our colony. You killed 12,000 of our people. We are here to give you one chance, only one. Return any survivors you have taken. Surrender your forces. Submit to coalition justice. Do this and we will show mercy. Morlax laughed. Mercy? You are in no position to offer mercy, human. You are outnumbered, outgunned. You should be the one surrendering. Bora's expression did not change. I will ask one more time. Return our people. There are no survivors, Morlax said, his voice mocking. We killed them all. Every last one. What will you do about it, weak little human? For a moment, Bora said nothing. Then she spoke, her voice soft but carrying absolute certainty. You just made the worst mistake of your species' existence. The communication ended. Morlax laughed again. She thinks she can threaten me. Attack, destroy them all. The Krovan fleet surged forward. 300 warships against 97. It should have been a quick victory. But then something strange happened. The human warships did not move forward to meet them. Instead, they launched something. Thousands of small objects poured out of the human ships. They looked like tiny spacecraft too small to carry crew. Drones, said a Krovan officer. Unmanned attack drones. Our shields can handle them. But these were not normal drones. They moved in coordinated swarms, like schools of fish or flocks of birds. They did not try to shoot the Krovan ships. They simply flew at them. Fast. Faster than any drone had the right to move. The first wave hit the leading Krovan ships. Explosions bloomed across their hulls. Each drone was a bomb, a suicide weapon. They punched through shields by overwhelming them with numbers. Where shields could stop one drone, they could not stop 100 hitting the same spot within seconds. The Krovan fleet began to break apart. Ships listed burning. Others tried to fall back. But the drones followed, always coordinating, always finding weak spots, never stopping. In 10 minutes, the Krovan lost 60 ships. 60 ships destroyed by unmanned weapons. Ships that had cost fortunes to build, crewed by trained soldiers, all gone. And the human warships had not fired a single shot. Morlax stared at his screens in horror. What is this? What kind of warfare is this? Then Boranam's voice came over open communication. Every ship in both fleets could hear her. That was restraint. That was us holding back. Return our people or we will show you what we do when we are not restrained. Morlax was shaking with rage. How dare these humans humiliate him? How dare they fight without honor? He would show them what real warriors could do. He had an idea. A cruel idea. One that would hurt them where it mattered most. Bring me the human prisoners, he ordered. But Commander, you said there were no survivors. I lied. We took 50 prisoners from the colony. Bring them to the command deck. We will broadcast this to the humans. Let them watch. What Morlax did next would haunt him in his final moments. He executed all 50 human prisoners on live broadcast. He made sure every human ship could see it. He wanted them to feel pain. He wanted them to break. On the Coalition monitoring station, Threxus watched in horror. No, he whispered. No, you fool. You absolute fool. Threxus had studied humans for years. He had read their history. He knew their psychology. And he knew exactly what was about to happen. Morlax thought he was hurting the humans, breaking their spirit. He did not understand that he had just removed the only thing holding them back. Mercy. On the human flagship, Boranam watched the executions without expression. When they ended, she turned to her crew. Her voice was quiet, calm, terrifying in its certainty. They chose this, she said. Remember that. They were given mercy. They refused it. They killed our people while we watched. Now we show them what humans really are. She activated a communication channel. Taeyang, you are authorized. Show them creativity. Across Krovan space, 50 special operations teams received their orders. Teams that had been hiding in Krovan territory for 3 years. Teams that knew every weakness in Krovan infrastructure. Teams that had been trained in methods the Coalition had never imagined. Operation Phantom began. The first thing to go was the power. On 7 Krovan worlds, the electrical grids simply died. No warning, no explanation. Lights went out. Heat stopped. In the cold of space, on orbital stations, people began to freeze. Then the communications went down. Military channels. Civilian networks, everything. The Krovan military could not coordinate, could not send orders, could not call for help. Food production facilities experienced catastrophic failures. Water treatment plants stopped working. Transportation systems crashed. Within hours, Krovan civilization began to collapse. And no one saw the humans doing it. No one caught them. No one even knew they were there. Krovan soldiers searched frantically for the saboteurs. They found nothing. Just their own systems failing one by one, their ships refusing commands, their weapons malfunctioning at critical moments. It was as if ghosts were attacking them. Taeyang Choi watched the chaos from a hidden location deep in Krovan space. He had 50 teams spread across their territory. Each team consisted of 5 soldiers. Just 250 humans total, and they were destroying an empire. "This is wrong," one of his newer operators said. "We are attacking civilians' infrastructure. This is not honorable combat." Taeyang looked at him. "Honor is a luxury. We don't have that luxury. We never did. On Earth, we fought each other for 300,000 years. We learned that survival matters more than honor. The Krovan killed 12,000 civilians. Now they learn what happens when you start that kind of war. But their civilians are suffering, yes. And their military is suffering too. And every moment they suffer, they are not attacking more human colonies. This is war, real war. Not the sanitized, honorable combat the Coalition practices. This is what humans do when you threaten our families." Taeyang paused. "If you cannot handle this, I will send you home. But this mission continues, because we will never let what happened at New Horizon happen again." The operator said nothing more. He returned to his station and continued his work. 72 hours after Boranam gave the order, the Krovan Dominion was in complete collapse. Their economy was ruined. Their military was paralyzed. Their government could not function, and they still had not seen a single human soldier in ground combat. Morlax, trapped in his flagship with failing systems, finally understood. The humans had been holding back during their 50 years in the Coalition. They had been playing by the rules because they chose to, not because they had to, and now that someone had broken those rules, humans were showing their true nature. He sent a surrender message. "Unconditional surrender. Please just make it stop." Boranam received the message. She read it slowly. Then she replied with 2 words, "Too late." The human fleet moved forward, not to negotiate, not to accept surrender. They moved forward to finish what the Krovan had started. Morlax, in his final moments, understood what the Venatrix had seen 200,000 years ago. Humans were not prey. They had never been prey. They were predators, patient predators who had learned to smile and shake hands. But when you hurt them, when you killed their people, the predator emerged, and predators did not forgive. The Krovan fleet was destroyed in the next 3 hours. Every ship, every station. The humans were efficient, methodical. They did not gloat. They did not celebrate. They simply did what needed to be done. Threxus watched it all from the monitoring station. He made detailed notes. The Coalition needed to see this, needed to understand what humans were capable of, not because humans were evil, but because humans were terrifyingly effective when their survival instincts were triggered. When it was over, when the last Krovan ship went dark, Boranam made one final broadcast. It was sent to every species in the Coalition, every world, every station. Everyone heard her words. "This is what happens when you attack humans without provocation. We offered mercy. It was refused. We followed Coalition protocols. They were ignored. So we did what we had to do, what we were designed by evolution to do. We protected our own." She paused, letting her words sink in across the galaxy. "The Krovan thought we were weak because we smiled, because we talked about peace, because we followed your rules. They were wrong. We smile because we choose to. We seek peace because we have seen enough war to last 1,000 lifetimes. We follow rules because civilization requires rules. But make no mistake, when you attack our families, when you kill our children, we remember what we are. We are the species that survived ice ages and plagues. We are the species that hunted mammoth to extinction. We are persistence predators who live." The emergency session of the Galactic Coalition Council was the largest in 10,000 years. Every species sent their leaders. Every world watched. The Grand Assembly Hall was packed with delegates who all wanted the same thing: to talk about the human problem. The Krovan Dominion no longer existed. In less than a week, humans had destroyed an empire that had stood for 5,000 years. Not through superior numbers, not through better weapons, through something far more frightening, through understanding exactly how to break an enemy completely. The council leader called the session to order. Her crystal body chimed as she moved. We are here to discuss the human response to the Krovan attack. While we acknowledge that the Krovan violated coalition law by attacking first, the human response has raised serious concerns. A delegate from the Farathi species stood up. The Farathi looked like large, intelligent cats. Concerns? That is too mild a word. The humans did not just defeat the Krovan. They erased them. They attacked civilian infrastructure. They used psychological warfare. They showed no mercy even when surrender was offered. This is not how civilized species conduct war. Other delegates shouted their agreement. The hall filled with noise, anger, fear, most of all fear. Hanbit Kang sat quietly in the human delegation section. He let them talk. Let them express their fear. He had expected this. Humans had lived with this fear their entire history. Fear of each other, fear of nature, fear of death. They had learned to function despite fear. Other species had not. Finally, the council leader asked him to speak. Hanbit stood slowly. He walked to the center platform. He looked around at all the alien faces watching him. Some with anger, some with terror, some with curiosity. You want to know why we responded the way we did, he said quietly. You want to understand why we were so brutal, so efficient, so merciless, he paused. The answer is simple. Because we had to be. You have had peace for 10,000 years. That is remarkable. That is beautiful. But it has made you forget something important. Peace is not natural. Peace is a choice. A difficult choice that must be defended. Humans did not have 10,000 years of peace. We had 300,000 years of war. War against nature. War against predators. War against disease. War against each other. Every single day was a fight for survival. And the ones who survived were the ones who were best at fighting. A delegate interrupted. So you admit you are naturally violent? Yes, Hanbit said simply. We are. Every species on Earth that competed with us is now extinct. We hunted them, outcompeted them, drove them away. Not because we were cruel, because we needed to survive. And we were very, very good at surviving. The hall was silent now. Everyone was listening. When we joined the coalition 50 years ago, we made a choice. We chose peace. We chose to follow your rules. We chose to be civilized. Not because we had to, because we wanted to. We were tired of war. We wanted something better. But that choice required trust. Trust that the peace would hold. Trust that if we followed the rules, others would too. The Krovan broke that trust. They attacked without warning. They killed 12,000 civilians. They murdered 50 prisoners on live broadcast. Hanbit's voice hardened. So we showed them what we are when the rules are broken. We showed them what 300,000 years of survival evolution looks like. We showed them that our desire for peace should never be mistaken for inability to wage war. You are afraid of us now. Good. You should be, because now you understand what the Krovan did not. Humans are dangerous. We will always be dangerous, but we only use that danger to protect our own. Another delegate stood. Then you admit you are a threat to the coalition. You should be expelled, quarantined, kept away from civilized species. Before Hanbit could respond, Doyen Lee stood up. He had been silent until now, but he could not stay silent any longer. May I speak? The council leader nodded. Doyen walked to the platform. He held up a data chip. This contains a file from your own archives. A file that was sealed 50 years ago. A warning from the Venatrix about humans. He plugged the chip into the central display system. The Venatrix message appeared for everyone to see. The hall erupted in chaos as delegates read the ancient warning. They saw that the coalition leaders had known about human nature all along, had hidden it, had gambled that 50 years of peace would prove it wrong. You knew, Doyun said, his voice shaking with emotion. The council knew what we were, knew the risks, but you wanted our technology, our science, our medicine, so you hid the warning and hoped for the best. The council leader's crystal body dimmed. She had no defense. It was true. Elder Quentis materialized in the center of the hall. The ancient Lumari rarely attended council sessions. When they did, everyone listened. There is more to the story, Quentis said, his voice echoing through the chamber. The Venatrix were powerful. They could destroy planets, yet when they met primitive humans on Earth, they did not conquer them. They fled. They went to the edge of the galaxy and hid there for thousands of years. Why? Someone asked. Because they recognized apex predators when they saw them. They understood that some prey is too dangerous to hunt. The Venatrix eventually went extinct. Not from war, not from disease, from fear. They became so paranoid about what humans might become that it destroyed their civilization from within. We now face a choice. Quentus continued. We can follow the Venatrix path, let fear of humans destroy us, or we can accept what they are and learn to coexist with them. Threxus stood up from the observer section. This was unusual. Observers rarely spoke at council sessions, but Threxus had something he needed to say. I have studied humans for 10 years, he said. I have watched them, lived among them. At first I thought they were strange. Too friendly, too peaceful for beings with such dangerous history, but now I understand. Humans are not peaceful because they cannot fight. They are peaceful because they know the cost of fighting. They have paid that cost for 300,000 years. They know what war really means, and they hate it. But they also know that sometimes war is necessary. The Krovan attacked first, killed civilians, refused mercy. They forced humans to respond, and humans did what they evolved to do. They protected their pack. Threxus looked around the hall. You are afraid because humans are good at war. But you should be grateful for the same reason. Because humans are loyal to their allies, and when you are allied with humans, they will fight for you with the same ferocity they showed against the Krovan. The question is not whether humans are dangerous. They are. The question is whether we are wise enough to accept that danger and work with it rather than against it. The council leader called for a vote on human expulsion. It was about to begin when every sensor in the hall started screaming. Something massive had just appeared at the edge of the galaxy, something that made the Krovan fleet look tiny. Long-range sensors showed hundreds of thousands of ships, all of them heading toward Coalition space. A message came through. Translated by the Coalition computers, it was simple and terrifying. We are the consuming tide. We have conquered 1,000 galaxies. Your galaxy is next. Surrender and be integrated into our collective. Resist and be eliminated. You have 10 standard cycles to decide. The hall erupted in panic. Species that had never seen real war were faced with extinction. Military commanders who had only studied history were now facing the largest invasion force ever recorded. Hanbit Kang remained calm. He looked at Commander Boranam, who had just entered the hall. She walked toward him slowly. Her uniform was still marked with carbon scoring from the Krovan battle. Her face showed no emotion. Your assessment? Hanbit asked quietly. Bora studied the tactical displays for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had just found a worthy opponent. Finally, she said, a fair fight. The council leader looked at her in shock. Fair. They outnumber all coalition forces combined by 1,000 to 1. How's that fair? Bora turned to face the council. Because they only think they outnumber us. They have never fought humans before. They have never fought species that refuse to quit no matter the odds. They have never encountered persistence predators. She walked to the central platform. You were about to vote on whether to expel us, whether to fear us, but now you face a real threat, and you have a choice. Expel us and face them alone, or accept what we are and let us teach you how to fight like humans. The vote on human expulsion was forgotten. In its place came a different vote. Whether to give humans full military authority over coalition defenses. The vote was unanimous, not because they trusted humans, but because they had no choice. The consuming tide was coming, and only humans seemed to understand what that really meant. Boranam accepted the position of Supreme Commander of Coalition Forces. Her first order was simple. Everyone who can fight will learn to fight. Everyone who cannot fight will learn to support those who can. We have 10 cycles to prepare. That is not enough time to teach you 300,000 years of evolution, but it is enough time to teach you how to survive. She looked around at all the alien faces, species that had never known real war, that had lived in peace for so long they had forgotten what fighting meant. The consuming tide thinks we will be easy prey. They think we will surrender or die quickly. They are wrong, because now you have something you did not have before. The first wave of the consuming tide hit coalition defenses on the 3rd day. 3 systems on the outer rim. The coalition fleet responded exactly as they had been trained.
Defensive formations.
Shields at maximum. Weapons ready. Standard protocols, they were destroyed in 40 minutes. The consuming tide did not negotiate. Did not take prisoners. Did not follow any rules. They simply overwhelmed the defenders with superior numbers and moved on. 3 systems, 20 billion lives gone. Bora Nam watched the reports from Coalition Command. Around her, alien officers were panicking. They had never seen losses like this. Never imagined war could be so brutal, so fast, so final. "We need to retreat and regroup," said a Ferrati commander. "We need time to prepare better defenses." "No," Bora said quietly. "But Commander, we lost 3 systems in less than an hour. At this rate, they will reach the core worlds in weeks." I said no. Bora turned to face them. Her voice was calm but firm. "You are thinking like prey. Prey runs, prey hides. Prey hopes the predator will go away. We are not prey. We are predators, and predators fight. But how do we fight this? They have 1,000 ships for every one of ours." Bora pulled up a tactical map. "You tried to defend those systems. That was your first mistake. You cannot defend everywhere against an enemy with overwhelming numbers, so we do not try." She highlighted several systems. "These systems are next in their path. Evacuate all civilians. Leave nothing of value. Then we mine every approach, every station, every planet. Make them pay for every meter of space they take." An officer looked shocked. "You want us to destroy our own systems?" "Yes, because empty systems cost us nothing to lose. But they will cost the enemy time and ships to secure. Time we use to prepare. Ships we destroy before they reach the core worlds." Bora looked at each officer in turn. "This is called strategic depth. The consuming tide is used to quick victories. We are going to teach them what it means to fight a long war." The evacuations began immediately. Entire planets emptied in days. Humans led the effort, showing coalition species how to move billions of people efficiently. It was organized chaos, but it worked. Taeyang Choi took command of Special Operations Training. He stood before 5,000 alien volunteers, warriors from dozens of species who wanted to learn human combat methods. "Everything you know about war is wrong," he told them bluntly. "You were taught to fight with honor, to avoid civilian casualties, to follow rules. Forget all of that. The consuming tide does not care about your honor. They will use every advantage, every weakness, every hesitation. So we must do the same." A Velroth warrior raised one of his forearms. "Are you saying we should fight without honor?" "I am saying honor is a luxury. You can have honor after you survive. Right now, survival is all that matters." Taeyang activated a holographic display. "The consuming tide thinks they are hunting prey. We are going to teach them that they are the ones being hunted." He showed them guerrilla tactics, ambush strategies, how to attack supply lines instead of military targets, how to make the enemy afraid to sleep, how to turn every shadow into a potential threat. Many aliens struggled with the concepts. They had been raised in peace. They thought of war as something distant and abstract. But humans knew war intimately, had lived with it for hundreds of thousands of years. And slowly, painfully, they began to teach the galaxy what real war meant. Yoonji Park, recovered from her ordeal at New Horizon, took on a different role. She organized civilian resistance training, teaching millions of non-combatants how to survive occupation, how to hide, how to sabotage, how to support resistance fighters. "Everyone is a soldier when survival is at stake," she told a group of Lumari civilians. "You do not need weapons to fight. Information is a weapon. Refusing to cooperate is a weapon. Making the enemy work for every small victory is a weapon." The Lumari were beings of pure energy. They had never fought anyone. The concept was alien to them. "But we are not warriors," one said. "We are scholars, teachers. We create art and study the universe." "And the consuming tide will erase all of that," Yoonji said gently but firmly. "Every painting, every song, every story, everything your people have created over millions of years, gone unless you fight." She showed them footage from human history. Ordinary people fighting against impossible odds. Not because they wanted to, because they had no choice. The Lumari watched in silence. And slowly they began to understand. The consuming tide continued to advance. They took system after system, but something was wrong. The victories were costing them more than they expected. Booby traps destroyed supply ships. Ambushes picked off isolated units. Their communications were being intercepted and disrupted, and the coalition forces were not breaking. They were not surrendering. They were retreating, yes, but in an organized way, fighting all the way, making the tide pay for every light year of space. The Supreme Commander of the Consuming Tide studied the reports with growing frustration. This should have been easy. Every other galaxy had fallen within months. But this galaxy was different. These species were learning to fight like something the Tide had never encountered before. "What are these humans?" he asked his intelligence officers. "They are the newest coalition members, Supreme Commander, only 50 years integrated. They appear to be leading the defense efforts. 50 years? And they command the coalition military?" "The coalition gave them full authority after we arrived, Supreme Commander." The Supreme Commander studied the tactical data more carefully. The humans were using strategies that looked familiar. Strategies the Tide had encountered once before in a galaxy far away. A galaxy that had taken 3 years to conquer instead of 3 months. A galaxy whose species had fought with desperate creativity. That galaxy had eventually fallen, but the cost had been terrible. The Tide had lost half their fleet, and these humans seemed to be teaching similar tactics to the entire coalition. "Find me everything about these humans," he ordered. "I need to know how they think." 6 months into the war, something changed. The coalition launched its first major offensive. Not in space, on the ground. A dozen fortified worlds that the Consuming Tide had already occupied. The attacks came from everywhere at once. Behind enemy lines, in supply depots, in command centers, small teams causing massive damage. The Tide had never faced serious ground resistance before. Species usually surrendered once their space forces were defeated, but coalition forces trained by humans fought differently. They did not meet the Tide in open battle. They ambushed patrols, sabotaged equipment, disappeared into civilian populations, and when Tide forces retaliated, they found civilians who fought back, who hid resistance fighters, who refused to cooperate. Threxus fought on one of those worlds. He had volunteered for combat training despite being over 100 years old. He led a mixed unit of Velroth and human special forces. They hit Tide positions at night, melting back into the darkness before reinforcements could arrive. After one particularly successful raid, a young Velroth warrior asked him a question. "Threxus, why do humans laugh before combat?" "I have seen it many times now." They joke, they smile. "Right before battle, why?" Threxus thought about it. "Because they are not afraid of death. They have lived with death for their entire evolutionary history. Every human knows they will die someday, so they laugh at it, mock it, refuse to let it control them." He paused. "That is their greatest strength. Not their weapons, not their tactics. Their refusal to be afraid." The Tide began to retreat from some occupied systems, not because they were defeated militarily, but because holding those systems cost more than they were worth. The constant attacks, the sabotage, the psychological pressure of never being safe. It wore on their troops. For the first time in a million years of conquest, the Consuming Tide was fighting a war of attrition, and they were losing. 8 months into the war, Taeyang Choi accomplished something remarkable. His team infiltrated a Tide command ship, not to attack it, to steal information. They copied the Tide's communication protocols, their strategic plans, their supply routes. With that information, Boranam was able to predict Tide movements. More importantly, she could feed them false information, make them think coalition forces were weak where they were strong, make them commit forces to battles that did not matter while ignoring critical targets. The Tide Supreme Commander realized too late what was happening. These humans had turned his own information network against him. They were not just fighting. They were learning, adapting, evolving their tactics, just like persistent predators chasing prey across endless plains. Patient, relentless, never stopping. 1 year after the invasion began, the Consuming Tide made a decision they had never made before. They requested negotiation. Boranam received the request in Coalition Command. She read it once, then again. Then she looked at Hanbit Kang, who had joined her in the command center. "They want to negotiate," she said. "Will you accept?" Bora was quiet for a long moment. "Yes, because we are not the Krovan. We do not fight for revenge. We fight to survive. If they will leave and never return, that is victory enough." The negotiation was brief. The Tide Supreme Commander appeared on screen. He looked tired, defeated in a way that went beyond military losses. "We underestimated you," he said simply.